When I was younger, I'd always thought that books were outdated, that they were just a relic of the past that would inevitably be discarded in favor of more modern forms of storytelling, such as TV or movies. But what I didn't understand then was that there was a whole world of stories right there beneath my feet. That there were stories of all kinds, written by all kinds of people, every single one of them a passion project, made up solely in the minds of the authors. They were stories that, for good or bad, held a single vision. But I never realized just how much I was missing, because I was too damn stubborn to open up a book and experience it. I'd always loved movies, and I used to spend hours upon hours on YouTube watching people break down many of the famous ones. I loved understanding the mechanics behind what made a good movie, and spent probably too much of my free time watching random movies or TV on Netflix. So I'd always had an interest in stories in general. I'd of course read a couple of books here and there, but it always had a negative attitude towards it throughout the entirety of my childhood. I'd always thought that reading was lame and really boring, and I saw it as something that you were just forced to do in school. But all that changed a couple of years back when actually my brother got the Mistborn series as a birthday gift. And that's when I was intrigued, and I must admit, I had never read anything like those first couple of chapters of Mistborn. And the ironic thing is that I wasn't a stranger to reading. I'd read plenty of books throughout school, many of them, of course, literary fiction, but many of those were classics. But it was just a completely different experience reading something that I wanted to read. It was something that I had picked up of my own volition, for my entertainment. It was not something I had just started reading for studying or analysis. And I think that really changes things. And of course, it not being literary fiction probably helps as well. But what surprised me the most was the sheer creativity within the books that I read. Before I read Mistborn, practically the only fantasy I'd been exposed to within pop culture was, medieval fantasy. And it wasn't even that prevalent. I mean, the only ones that come to mind, besides the most recent ones, are The Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. But with books, there are hundreds upon hundreds of stories to choose from. Fantasy, which is the genre that I read the most, is just much more fleshed out and explored than if you exclude books. Heck, most of the stories out there by far comes in books. And I think part of that creativity that I encountered that made it feel like such a breath of fresh air compared to TV was coming from that experience. The many years of rich literary history that has evolved the genre throughout the years. But I think another huge part of why I love books so much is the vision. When it comes to books, I think there is a fundamental difference between that and any other media such as television that goes beyond just the medium with which it's presented. You see, movies are a studio job. You have, first of all the producers that pay for the production and the distribution of the movie. And usually they're convinced to invest in the movie after receiving a pitch from someone who thinks that this idea could make them money. Then you bring on a director and a writer, often an entire writing team. And then when the manuscript is written, it's up to the director to decide how he wants to interpret the writing. Then they hire actors to embody the written roles, and cinematographers for lighting and scene composition, and at the end, editors to stitch together the movie in post. And then of course, there's always the possibility of producer and studio interference at any point of these stages if they feel unhappy with what they're seeing. My point is, the things that you watch took hundreds, if not thousands of people's involvements. Many hundreds of layers of people who all probably have differing visions for the final product. With books, however, they're almost entirely created by one person. Now don't get me wrong, there are cover artists and editors and all sorts of other people working on books too. But the stories that you read are most often the product of one coherent mind. For better or for worse, one vision. Sometimes you'll find books where authors allow themselves to indulge in their world. Maybe they'll take it slow, exploring different characters and worlds to sometimes excessive detail. Maybe they'll stay in their characters' minds, embodying the character's viewpoint through the writing itself, and showing through just word choice so much about their character. If it's a fantasy book, maybe they'll spend a bit extra time world building. Now, I know all these things can get tedious, but that's why some people might prefer some more fast-paced books. Maybe the author wants to bring in some mystery, show just a little bit, but leave enough for the imagination. But either way, every one of them will bring something that so much else lacks: heart and passion, and the freedom to explore whatever they want. Something that almost no other form of storytelling has. I think people are too often discouraged by books. I mean, a lot of people tend to associate books with their time in school. A time when they had to read not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. And I think it can really kill the passion in people. And it makes sense why so many people rarely read. Books can be hard to get into, and they can be very daunting. Looking down at that mountain of words, flipping through hundreds of pages of writing, it can be scary. You have to focus for a long time. You can't just turn off your brain like you can when you're watching a movie. And you have to create the image described in your own mind. But I think that's also part of the beauty of it. Everyone reads a book in different ways, and everyone has a different image of a character in their mind. But even though the images themselves might be more vague than a movie, you can live the character. You can experience a character's entire thought process, which creates so much more depth and relatability than a movie ever could. So I urge you, even if you've never enjoyed a book or you've only read books through school, ask yourself, what do you enjoy? And try to pick up a book that seems genuinely interesting to you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover something you never knew was there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to talk or join the community in general, I have a Discord link in the description down below. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, go ahead and subscribe. Check out some of my other videos if you like, and I'll see you guys in the next video.